Legend of Lemnear is about a warrior girl who goes to a slaver town because her brother was kidnapped by like an evil sorcerer. And her brother turns out to be the warrior of bronze, and he's supposed to team up with someone called the warrior of silver to take down a sort of evil wizard demon king, who I think is also referred to as the warrior of gold or some shit. Anyway, turns out she's the warrior of silver, so she has to save her brother from the evil wizard and then take down an evil king. And then in the middle of it, she briefly becomes kidnapped by slavers where she learns about the legends of the prophecy and gets like mind controlled, and nothing much really happens with that. It all turns out all right in the end, I guess. The main reason I was interested in this in the first place is because it was created by Satoshi Urushihara, and I'm a pretty big fan of his art style. I always love the aesthetic of it, and it's also really unique because he's kind of the only person that draws like him, at least as far as I'm aware of. The plot itself is rather plain and boring, generic fantasy. Two warriors team up, take down evil, blah, 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 blah. What I will bring attention to, and what I found myself probably enjoying the most out of this, outside of Satoshi Urushihara's art style, is there's a sort of like subtle sexuality to it, in that I've always preferred sort of fan service that feels in place and makes sense. So there's sort of like the harem women are all sort of naked, and when the women get kidnapped by the slavers, they sort of like get stripped down. And so there's also like a lot of loose fitting clothing. So you see occasional nip slips, right? And I've always been more of a fan of that sort of like subtleness for fan service, where it feels appropriate, like it would happen in that situation, than when a show like Dead stops and then a character face plants into a woman's boobs and they go, "Oh, get out of my boobs," and then she punches him. I always appreciated more when it's sort of like a result of either what would be happening in the scenario or just the clothing the characters are wearing. And I will say that Legend of Lemnear also was surprisingly gory, but it kind of took me off guard by that. Don't let me oversell it. I've seen things that are more gory. You probably have too. But what I'm saying is when they're fighting the final boss and the main character just gets a fucking hole punched straight through her, and like the blood sprays out and you can see like the insides of her body. And it sort of took me off guard because there wasn't a lot of like a gore or like violence in any other parts of it. It was just sort of like that one instance. And so combined with like the fan service occurring only when appropriate and the show not slowing down to bring attention to the fact that the fan service is happening, and then the gore not just happening all of this time as this like visual stimulus, but only happening when it would be the most relevant or impactful, gives Legend of Lemnear a sort of subtle sense of maturity to what would otherwise be a very generic 80s OVA. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye-bye.